Before you submit your personal statement, please watch this video until the end so that you can know what mistakes you have to avoid in your personal statement. So one of the biggest mistakes that you can make is submitting a personal statement that has grammar and spelling errors. So having these errors really comes off as unprofessional and maybe even a bit lazy to programs because it is such an important application. So to submit it with spelling errors or grammar errors is really a mistake that you want to avoid. So that's why I highly recommend that you proofread your personal statements and also get the opinion of someone else to proofread your personal statements as well for any grammatical or spelling errors. If you don't have anyone that is good with grammar or spelling, that's fine. What I do recommend is checking out Grammarly. They do have a completely free option that they can just correct any grammar or identify any spelling errors. Bad grammar can also affect the clarity and the fluency of your personal statement. So it might make sense to you, but if another reader goes through it, then they are just completely confused. So there are classic stories that show up in tens of thousands of personal statements that program directors have seen so many times before. And those are cliches. You might not even know that your personal statement includes cliches. So let's take a closer look at what these are. So the first one is having quotes. So starting your personal statement with some quote that you find very profound or relating to the specialty or your own personal circumstances. So many people do those quotes. And another thing is spending so much time in your personal statement describing the specialty. So remember that whoever is reading your personal statement is already in the field. So explaining to them how great the specialty is or what it is and what it entails, that is played out, and it definitely does not make your personal statement unique. But some specific examples of cliches are like a personal or family history of someone being sick, you stating that your entire family is filled with doctors, or that, hey, I love to help people, and kind of just following along that line or train of thought. Or you might think you're being out of the box by talking about stories of you've always had this intense curiosity from a young age, you love to solve mysteries, and you love science, or that time that you were on an airplane or someplace that some emergency situation occurred and you saw this doctor spring into action and you were so amazed. Or talking about when you were younger and you always used to dress up as a doctor. So those are all examples of stories or personal statement ideas that are cliches. However, I want you to know that the most important thing is to make your personal statement unique. So even though your main theme or your personal statement might be what some may consider a cliche, if that is your story, it is very impactful. It is the reason that you chose a specialty that you decided to go into, then definitely pursue it. But always try to make it your own and make it unique. So this is a very simple mistake that you can easily avoid, and that is formatting errors. So if you have uploaded your personal statement onto ERAS, I highly recommend that you check out the preview of how it looks, because then you'll see what the program directors will see. So it's very important that your paragraphs are single-spaced. So avoid the whole double spacing in between each lines. And also you want to make sure that there aren't any weird special characters included in your personal statement, like a randomly bold letter or word. So it's important that it is single spaced. Your paragraphs need to be distinct. You can either do that by placing a space between each paragraph. However, I highly recommend that instead of doing that, you indent your paragraphs. So this way you can have or fit more words onto one page. So if your personal statement is longer than you'd like it to be, that is one way of not letting it look so overwhelming. If you like this type of content, then please be sure to power up the like button, hit subscribe, and the notification bell so that you never ever miss another video like this. So some bonus points are to try to avoid poor organization and poor transitions. So let's look at the poor organization. So you have to remember that it needs to be easy to read, easy to understand, and very clear and very concise. You don't want it to seem so haphazard and like all over the place, like this random puzzle piece that they have to try to figure out. And another thing is poor transitions. So when you transition from one paragraph to another, it should not be abrupt. You should have some sort of transition sentence that leads you into the next point that you're trying to make. This will also improve the flow, the fluency, the clarity, everything of your personal statement. So remember, it shouldn't be this confusing puzzle piece. It should be easy to understand. Another mistake that some people are a bit sensitive about is a personal statement that is too long. So typically it is recommended to have your personal statement to be as close to 650 words as possible. However, it's okay if it extends up to 750 words. The reason why people recommend 650 words is because people think that it will be better for the personal statement to fit on one page. So it's almost as if they're trying to be thoughtful to the persons that are reading so many different personal statements. Because let's say that everyone's personal statement was 2 to 3 pages, that would take considerably longer versus applicants who had a personal statement that was like a page or a page and a quarter long. I've also found that sticking to the 650 words, that helps you to make your points more concise, to be clear, and to make sure that every single sentence that you make or write is clear. It adds to the overall story. It's not a filler, it's not fluff, it's something that absolutely needs to be there and gives the reader a clear idea of who you are, why you're choosing this specialty, and what you have to contribute to it. So if you want to avoid overwhelming your future program director or probably even boring them a bit, that might sound bad, but the personal statement is very personal to you. But after reading so many personal statements, the story that you might find interesting might not be so interesting to other persons to read like 3 pages of it. So try to stick as close as possible to one page, and I recommend around 650 words, but around 750 is okay. The next big mistake is having too many fillers in your personal statement. So it's all fluff, no substance. It does not add to the overall theme of your personal statement. It does not help them to get to know you better, why you chose a specialty or anything. It contributes nothing. Like it says, it's just fillers, it's just fluff. So you want to avoid that and remember to be as clear and concise as possible. The next mistake might sound confusing for some, and that is having a personal statement that is too personal. You might be wondering, isn't that the point of a personal statement, to be personal? Well, yes and no. So of course you want the program directors or the reader to get to know you properly, or just a brief introduction of who you are and insights into who you are, and just to know your insights, your interests. However, your personal statement should not only be about that. Like, for example, writing a personal statement about some personal or family history of some illness, and all the things you like to do and the most meaningful points in your life. And at the end, you just throw in that, hey, I want to apply to internal medicine or general surgery randomly at the end. And that wasn't the main focus of your personal statement. It wasn't properly incorporated in the story that you're trying to tell. It was just basically just very personal details, maybe even too much, and very little focus on the whole aim and purpose of this personal statement, which is to match into a pediatrics residency program or psychiatry, internal medicine, or general surgery, or anesthesiology. You get the point. So just think about that. The next mistake is kind of a 180, and that is being too generic. So there's nothing personal at all. It's very stoic. It's not unique. It does not stand out. And honestly, that personal statement could be a fit for any of the tens and thousands of applicants that are applying, because it's like a one size fits all. It's not unique. It does not stand out. And more than likely, it includes things that the program directors have heard several times over. So you definitely want to avoid being generic. The next huge mistake is plagiarism. So for some reason, some persons are wondering, hey, how much plagiarism is okay? Or is plagiarism okay? And the answer to that is absolutely not. It is not okay to plagiarize anything ever. Like, there is no circumstance where plagiarism is okay. For everyone that is applying to residency, they have spent thousands of dollars in USMLE exams, prep, or debt in student loans or other loans, and it has been a very long journey. The last thing that you want to do is at or towards the end of this journey, it is basically ruined because of plagiarism. If you plagiarize, what this says to the programs is that you might be lazy, you do not produce original content, you do not think that this was important enough to take the time to create your own original content, and it is extremely dishonest, and you're probably not a trustworthy applicant. So there's no point in asking about, hey, do they have plagiarism checkers? Will they know if I plagiarize? Because plagiarism checkers are a common thing. There are so many different ways of checking for plagiarism right now. It's not worth it. Just throw that idea away and focus on creating original content. So you have created your completely original personal statement. But a mistake that you can make is being too creative. And that is almost like writing a descriptive story, very abstract, not very direct. It's just a lot of excessive creativity. And you have to remember, it's great to be creative, and maybe that can even help you to stand out or have a unique personal statement. But to be shrouded in long prose and poems and just a lot of dramatics, that can work against you. Because remember that this application is a professional one. Your personal statement is a professional document. So you do not want to be overly creative and forgetting completely that this is a professional document. The next huge mistake is having the wrong focus in your personal statement. So for some person's CV or in their personal statement, they're focusing on their experiences in high school. They're talking about the jobs that they had in high school, different experiences, and very little about medical school, your medical training, or different clinical experiences. So that is a huge mistake. Another thing is focusing on fellowship when you're actually applying to residency. So say, for example, you're applying to internal medicine and your whole personal statement is focused on cardiology. It's almost as if you're skipping a step, right? But it's important to know that if you do have considerable cardiology clinical experience, you can mention it, but you don't want to make that your sole focus, because the first step is to get into an internal medicine residency. Another way that applicants can be completely missing the mark is by focusing on why you became a doctor, right? You have to remember that at this point, especially if you're an IMG, you are already a doctor, okay? Like, you already been into medical school. It isn't a medical school admissions essay. It is a residency application, right? So you've already did the whole doctor thing. That should have been your medical school essay. And for this ERAS residency personal statement, your focus should be on that specific specialty that you are applying to. The next big mistake is writing only one personal statement. So if you are applying to more than one specialty, you should definitely not have just one personal statement. It is very important that to any specialty that you are applying to, it is unique to that specialty. It does not seem like a backup plan, but like that specialty is a priority. And you should take the time to write 2 distinct essays. So if you are applying to internal medicine and pediatrics, it has to be different, because they have a completely different characteristics and qualities that you can bring out into your personal statement to make you stand out. Also, if you have a specific program that you are interested in, like a specific university or whatever that you really want to go to, it can go a long way of writing a personal statement that has some special or specific touches that's geared towards that program. Another mistake is avoiding program requirements. So some programs specifically state what you should discuss in your personal statement. So if you blindly create one personal statement and not pay attention to the program requirements and submit that personal statement, well, they may not look at you favorably, because it shows that you may not be as dedicated or really want to go to that specific program because they asked you for X and you gave them A. So that's an important thing to remember. So some bonus points or some bonus mistakes to avoid is, first, think about your red flags, right? So let's say that you have USMLE attempts. That is a red flag that you definitely would want to think about addressing in your personal statement. But let's say that you scored a 250 in step 1 and then a 240 in step 2. That isn't a red flag and not something that you need to draw attention to, because those are both good scores. Or let's say that you had a year or a 2-year break in the middle of your medical school training. That is a red flag that you may want to bring up as well. So you might be wondering, hey, how would they know that? Well, on the ERAS application, they specifically ask you about that. They ask you if you have had any interruptions in your medical training. And of course, for the ERAS application, you always need to be honest. The last thing that you want to be is just caught up in a lie in an interview or being tongue-tied and just completely confused, because you don't want to come off as being untrustworthy. So never lie in your ERAS application, and definitely do not plagiarize. Another mistake to avoid is telling how great you are, but not showing how great you are. Like, for example, just saying, I am a great leader, I have great clinical skills. Instead of just saying those blanket statements and giving yourself a pat on the back, then try to think of scenarios or clinical cases that stood out to you that actually demonstrate these qualities. So that's why when writing your personal statement, think about showing and not telling. Okay, So a quick bonus point here, if your personal statement is too long, right? Let's say that you want it to fit on one page, but there are like 3 extra lines on the second page. What you can do, like I said before, instead of having spaces between the paragraphs, you can choose to eliminate those spaces and instead indent the paragraphs. So just press the space button like 12 times and you'll be fine. Another trick that works now, but it could change, is to copy your personal statement. Let's say that you wrote it in a Word document. So copy your personal statement and then transfer it into something like, say, Notepad or the text app. And when you do that, when you copy it into that, you're going to want to copy it again and then put it into Eras. And for some reason, when you do that, like when you kind of just transfer it that way, it looks not as long. I don't know why, but it works. And I guess that is a secret tip for you guys that works for now. But that brings us to the end of this video. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to pop the like button, hit subscribe, and the notification bell so that you never ever miss another video like this. Thank you so much for watching, and please leave all your questions in the comment section below. Goodbye!